The film opens with a burning house, and on the street a child who looks very weak is seen. She eventually falls down and turns out to be the only survivor of the incident. 8 years after the incident, a girl is seen running. It seems she is trying to avoid something. Yes, she is Phoenix, the child who survived the house fire 8 years ago. Suddenly, a dog chases her. She runs and manages to save herself by climbing over a fence. When she picks up a pistol, her father named Norman appears from behind. It turns out Norman is training Phoenix to be able to survive and become a strong woman when she grows up. Although he cannot see, Norman is still able to take good care of her. The dog that chased her turns out to be theirs. They live in a secluded place, far from the city center, in a house where Norman lives only with Phoenix and a dog named Shadow. While cutting her father's hair, Phoenix asks about her mother. Norman says that during the fire he was only able to save his child. At that time, Norman was very strict in raising his daughter. He even did not allow Phoenix to go to the city center. All this was not without reason. In the city, there was a surge in kidnapping cases of children. The thieves took the children's organs to sell. Soon after, a woman came. Her name is Hernandez. She always comes there to take some of Norman's plants to sell in the city. Hernandez is very caring towards Phoenix. Before leaving, she asks Norman to take Phoenix with her to the city so that Phoenix can learn a bit about the outside world and meet other children her age. However, Norman refuses. Hernandez then says if the father continues to confine his daughter, one day the child will run away from home. Although hesitant, Norman finally allows his daughter to go to the city with Hernandez, with the condition that she must return home before evening. While on the road, Phoenix sings a few lines of a song that her mother often sang when she was little. Upon hearing this, Hernandez felt sympathy and decided to take the child to visit her burnt-down house. Initially hesitant due to her father's strict prohibitions, Phoenix eventually agreed after Hernandez promised not to inform her father. Upon arrival, she entered and placed a flower on her mother's grave. Soon after, she heard a noise and, frightened, quickly left the place. While in the city, Phoenix had a chance to play with other children her age at a shelter named Covenant. Not long after, Hernandez, having finished selling the plants, came to pick her up. But before leaving, Phoenix went to the restroom. Inside, she realized a man had been watching her. His name was Raylan, and at that moment, her dog also arrived, barking upon sensing something suspicious. Phoenix warned him not to mess with her, or he would have a serious problem with Shadow. Before leaving, Raylan managed to touch the child's hair. As they departed, Raylan's friend arrived and they followed them. Shortly after, Phoenix reached home and quickly entered. Before leaving, Hernandez told Norman that he was a bad parent for always restraining his daughter. When Hernandez was about to leave, a car blocked her way. The man inside the car was the same one from the restroom encounter with Phoenix earlier that day. He asked her to move her car, but shortly after she drove off, an unexpected event occurred. A friend of Raylan had entered her car during her talk with Raylan earlier, and she was killed instantly. Now we shift to Norman and his daughter. Feeling lonely, Phoenix expressed her desire to go to school and live a normal life like other children. However, Norman refused, citing the unsafe conditions outside. This led to an argument between them. Soon after, Shadow seemed to notice something in front of the house and followed it, and Norman, intending to feed Shadow, couldn't find his dog and decided to look outside. However, the kidnappers had already entered his house. Now we turn to Phoenix, who was in her room at the time. Lost in thought, she heard someone entering the house and realized it wasn't her father. She immediately hid under the bed. With clever maneuvering, she moved to hide under the cabinet, the terror lurking in the silence of the night as Phoenix's careful attempts to escape. She headed for the exit, but it wasn't as easy as she thought. Realizing her path was blocked, she slowly snuck into the space under the stairs. Now back to Norman, who was searching for his dog. Soon he found Shadow, dead, and then noticed blood around the dog's body. Realizing something was amiss, he immediately thought of Phoenix, alone in the house. Phoenix, feeling somewhat safe, tried to exit, but one of the kidnappers spotted her. At that moment, Norman appeared and instructed Phoenix to hide in a metal box in the basement. As Phoenix ran, she was nearly caught by the other kidnappers. While Norman managed to hide for a while, his arm was struck by a hammer as he tried to fend off the kidnapper. Phoenix, trapped inside, eventually fainted due to limited air supply. Outside, one of the kidnappers noticed Norman hiding in the garage and decided to investigate, only to suddenly hear the cries of his accomplice. Rushing over, he found his friend nearly suffocated, with his nose and mouth glued shut. He quickly stabbed him with a screwdriver to allow him to breathe again, and they realized whom they were up against. Down in the basement, Norman, with his keen instincts, felt the vibration in the pipes and realized the water was turned on above. Sure enough, one of the kidnappers had inserted a water hose into the metal box to force Phoenix out of hiding. Duke, one of the kidnappers, threatened to electrocute Phoenix with an electric cable if Norman didn't come out of hiding. Slowly, Norman emerged from the shadows, with his sharp hearing guiding him, and a fight ensued. Despite his age, his military training allowed him to hold his own until he accidentally bumped into a faucet, causing the metal box to slowly fill with water. Phoenix, realizing this, tried to open the door, but it was futile until Norman nearly lost the fight on purpose. Just as Duke was about to finish him, a massive explosion occurred. The cable Norman threw ignited a gas leak, killing Duke instantly. Raylan and his friend then arrived at the scene, while Norman, having survived, quickly worked to open the metal box to rescue Phoenix. Realizing the gravity of the situation, they both hurried upstairs, only to find the door still locked from the inside. Knowing Norman and Phoenix were still inside, they were trapped with no choice but to hide. While searching, Raylan told Phoenix it was all a misunderstanding, and she had nothing to fear from him but from Norman instead. Just then, Norman appeared and attacked, but was outnumbered and eventually knocked unconscious. Phoenix tried to help her father, but Raylan revealed a mark on his head, showing he was Phoenix's real biological father. After seeing this, she believed him. Raylan explained that he was arrested by the police during the fire, suspected of being the perpetrator, but he was also involved in drug smuggling and various other crimes. This led to his 8-year imprisonment, during which he never saw Phoenix, his daughter, until she was found and cared for by Norman. Just as they were about to finish Norman, he regained consciousness and hid. As one of them was about to take Phoenix away, suddenly Phoenix stabbed at the man's foot. Norman reappeared and killed the kidnapper with a shovel. Realizing this, they decided to end it all. Before deciding to hide, Phoenix asks Norman about her true identity, but he doesn't respond due to the urgency of the situation. Suddenly, Raylan's dog appears, threatening to attack Norman. Phoenix heads to her room while Norman rushes to the attic. The dog attempts an attack, but Norman narrowly escapes by hiding behind iron bars. Meanwhile, Phoenix, who had managed to escape through a window, is caught and sedated, causing her to faint. After securing Phoenix, the kidnappers decide to set the house on fire and leave. Norman, realizing his house is ablaze, struggles to escape and, despite his blindness, laments the ordeal momentarily. Elsewhere, Phoenix wakes from her stupor to find herself in Raylan's headquarters. There, Raylan reveals her true identity as Tara, and the fact that her mother is still alive. Deciding to leave, Phoenix heads to a shelter she had seen when visiting the city with Hernandez. At the shelter's entrance, a woman in a wheelchair appears and starts singing a song Phoenix's mother often sang, revealing herself as Josephine, her mother. Josephine shows Phoenix photos of her younger self and explains her severe heart condition, a result of the fire's smoke damaging her organs, including her heart. While Josephine shares her story, that she needs a new heart and it has to be a blood relative, Raylan gives Phoenix a drink spiked with a sleeping drug, causing her to pass out again. Now back to Norman. Raylan's dog, also a survivor of the fire, hears something stirring. Using his acute hearing, Norman locates the sound, which turns out to be Hernandez's necklace, saddening him further upon realizing Hernandez's demise. Raylan's dog, now docile, joins Norman, who decides to seek revenge and save Phoenix, using the dog to lead him to Raylan's location. Meanwhile, Phoenix, now conscious, finds herself in Raylan's operation room, where her mother thanks her, upsetting Phoenix as she realizes her mother intends to use her as a donor for her own survival. Just as the operation is about to commence, the electricity cuts out, orchestrated by Norman, who arrives just in time, ensuing another fight where he takes down one of the men with his sharp instincts. Hearing their friend's screams, the family realizes Norman has been led there by the dog. Raylan quickly ordered 4 of his friends to check the area, but they found Norman pretending to be dead, aided by the water's waves, which instantly killed 3 of them. Unexpectedly, one of Raylan's men, who still had a good heart, realized the wrong Raylan was doing to Phoenix. He instructed Norman to finish him off and revealed the way to Raylan and Phoenix's location. Meanwhile, Raylan and Josephine attempted to flee, and the terrified surgeon tried to escape first, but ultimately met his end at Norman's hands. Raylan shot at the ceiling to clear his vision while searching for Norman, but the clever old man used a smoke bomb, making it difficult to see in the room. Amidst the smoke, Norman managed to land a few hits on Raylan. Raylan thought he had shot Norman after hearing his pained cries, but it was just a ruse, and Norman reappeared to beat him. However, the wheelchair Josephine was sitting in started moving on its own, dragging along Phoenix, who was handcuffed to it. Phoenix tried to cut off her mother's hand but failed, and they both fell into an empty column. In the midst of the fight between Norman and Raylan, Raylan's dog appeared and bit Raylan's hand. When he was distracted, that's when Norman ended it by gouging out Raylan's eyes. Phoenix, having survived, tried to approach, but Norman forbade her, revealing the truth that he wasn't her biological father. Unexpectedly, Raylan, still alive, stabbed Norman from behind. Phoenix retaliated, ending it all, and Raylan died beside his wife. Phoenix tried to help her foster father, but it was too late. Phoenix then left for the shelter, where a new friend asked for her name. She answered that her name was Phoenix. The movie ends. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, because by subscribing you have supported me to make better videos. See you in the next video.